Welcome to the December meeting of the Human Services Advocacy Network, presented by the Center for Community Solutions in partnership with Lutheran Metropolitan Ministries. My name is William Tarter, Jr. I'm a policy fellow here at the Center for Community Solutions. It's my honor to welcome you to a very special convening today. This morning, we'll hear a conversation between the new Chief Executive Officer of the Center for Community Solutions, Emily Campbell, and the Chief Executive Officer of the City Club of Cleveland, Dan Moulthrop, as we hear Ms. Campbell's thoughts on the future of the Center for Community Solutions and the current health and human services landscape. We look forward to today's discussion and thank you all for joining us. Before we begin today's program, a quick public service announcement and a few housekeeping notes. Please check out communitysolutions.com for our brand new project called The Status of Women. Here you can find the latest data on women's health from across the state of Ohio. Today's event is being recorded for individuals who may not be able to join us today. If you tweet about the event, please use the hashtag HSAN. About halfway through the program, the audience will be invited to ask questions at the microphones in the audience. And I'll be walking from side to side with the microphone. So start thinking about your questions. To begin our HSAN agenda today, we'll first hear remarks from our host, Lutheran Metropolitan Ministries. Please welcome Kendra Daniel, Vice President of Quality and Compliance at Lutheran Metropolitan Ministries.
I knew I was presenting and I sat in the back of the room, which is not a good thing. Anyway, so I had to come up. But anyway, good morning and welcome to Lutheran Metropolitan Ministry. Our president and CEO, Maria Fosha, apologizes she had a prior engagement, so she asked me to welcome you in her stead. Again, my name is Kendra Daniel. I'm the VP of Quality and Compliance here, as well as oversee the guardianship program. Lutheran Metropolitan Ministry, or LMM, like we like to call it, has been in the social service sphere since 1969, where we were founded by Reverend Richard Searing to consider an appropriate response to the pain of the upheaval in the Huff area as a result of the Huff riots in Cleveland in the mid-1960s. From that time, this organization has demonstrated an unwavering commitment to addressing chronic needs, enabling people facing adversity to become self-sufficient, and advocating for systems change. Currently, our programming focuses on guardianship, housing and shelter, workforce development, and youth resiliency. We are proud to be a host of this session of HSAN for this great conversation around the changing landscape in the social service sphere. So welcome, and we appreciate you coming to our little humble abode. Back to you, William. Thank you.
Thanks, Kendra. And as you walked in, you saw some of the renderings from their new Workforce Development Center, which we're really excited to see that move forward. So thank you so much, Kendra. And now to introduce our featured speaker and the moderator for today's event. Emily Campbell serves as the President and Chief Executive Officer for the Center for Community Solutions, overseeing research, policy, and administration-related activities. Campbell previously worked for a U.S. Congressman and has consulted with numerous nonprofits, foundation, and government agencies to provide data and public policy decision support. Her work on poverty has appeared in every major newspaper in Ohio, and she has been interviewed by a wide variety of media outlets, including The Economist, The New York Times, ESPN, MSNBC, and NPR. She's the immediate past chair of the Board of Directors of the Literacy Cooperative and was named one of Cleveland's 40 Under 40 by Crain's Cleveland Business. Campbell holds a Bachelor of Arts in Economics and a Master of Arts in Political Science from Case Western Reserve University. Our moderator today is Dan Moulthrop. Dan Moulthrop was appointed to the City Club's helm in 2013 after many years as a member, volunteer, and frequent forum moderator. Prior to joining the City Club, he was the co-founder of the Civic Commons, a pioneer in the field of social media for civic good. He's an award-winning journalist, a former high school teacher, and a graduate of UC Berkeley's Graduate School of Journalism. He lives in Shaker Heights with his wife and 3 children, and his favorite City Club forum changes almost monthly. Please welcome Emily Campbell and Dan Moulthrop. Oh, so sorry.
I actually cannot get up. Ready? Our podium is not a comfortable place.
Now we're on? Yeah.
All right.
Hi. Hi, everybody. Good morning. Happy Friday morning. And I hope everybody had a great Hanukkah if you celebrate it. Looking forward to a good Christmas, Kwanzaa, and of course, I wish you all Festivus blessings.
No feats of strength, hopefully.
No feats of strength. There will be an airing of grievances.
Oh, good.
So, hey, congratulations, Emily Campbell.
Thank you.
I know you've only been in the job for 2 weeks, as you just told me. What are your first impressions?
Oh, that's a great question. You know, I've been with the Center for Community Solutions for a long time, done a lot of things, know so many of you in the room, and thank you for being here this morning. It's great to see so many friendly faces. You know, but there has been a substantial change, I think, and part of it came even from when it was announced that I would be succeeding John Corlett in just both the level of attention and the level that people are listening to what I say, which is very good, but also in the outpouring of support from all corners of the community that has been really gratifying. You know, I'm a person who has always tried to work hard, and the recognition isn't really what the work is about for me. And so it's been a good ride so far, but there's so many decisions to make.
So, I mean, one of the things that I found in leadership roles, particularly like in an organization that you think you know pretty well, and then you get to the quote unquote corner office, and you're like, oh wait. Oh, yeah. So what were some of those, like, oh, wait moments for you?
Oh, that's a great question.
Over the last 2 weeks.
Over the last 2 weeks.
Besides your first board meeting 1 hour into your first day.
Yes. Thanks. Yeah, you know, I think all of the requests are coming to me now. I've had lots of people from all different parts of the community reach out wanting community solutions to do things. And so wading through all of those is something that I always collaborated with my colleagues on, but now I have to give the bad news if we're not going to work on something or find other solutions to some of the problems. And so that is something that has been a bit of a change.
You noted a few moments ago that you've been at the Center for Community Solutions for a number of years, since 2007, I think, when you started as a tiny teenage fellow.
Sure.
When did you know that you wanted to lead the organization?
Today? No. No, when I started at Community Solutions, my goal was to make it through one promotion in 5 years. And here we are, all the time later. You know, John Corlett really helped me understand what leadership of the organization would mean. And so it was probably a few years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, where I thought, you know, I think I'm ready to step into this new position. I didn't know if it was going to be with Community Solutions or if you know, I need to move up to move out, which I know many people in nonprofits have had that experience as well. But it's a fabulous organization, and I'm delighted to be able to continue to grow and to help it grow in this new role for me.
What's your favorite part about the organization?
All of it.
I mean, and you're going to say, like,
the people. I work with really smart people.
Yeah.
Yes. No, but that is my favorite part of the organization.
Specifically, I mean, like, I want to know what drew you to the work and what kept you focused on the work.
Sure. You know, the Center for Community Solutions is a special organization. We get to work with people at the highest echelons of power and the deepest grassroots and everything in between. And it's really the solution focus of the organization that continues to draw me to the work. We're not the Center for Studying Problems, although I'm pretty good at studying problems and you know, finding the implications of different community conditions, but we're looking for sustainable solutions that change people's lives. And it's a place where ideas are free-flowing all the time, and our job is to figure out what can be practically done, what are the levers that we can shift that can have a transformative impact in communities across the state.
You mentioned the highest echelons of power in the state. Talk about what it's like to sort of to be in those rooms in Columbus and to watch those rooms kind of change over the last last 4 or 6 years.
You know, very early in my career, I worked for a U.S. congressman and worked very, very closely with him. and learned early on that all the policymakers are just people. And so there's almost always, not always, but there's almost always some level of common ground that we can find, whether it may be, I don't know, a love of Wordle, as simple as that, or other issues that people care about. But what sometimes helps me in the policy sphere is to not worry about people's motivations or intentions and just sort of focus on the outcomes, because there are a lot of people that I don't agree with on both sides of the aisle, but if they're willing to make the right policies that'll help people, I'm okay with that. A great example is we had an amazing success in the last state budget to get coverage for doulas under Medicaid to help women who are pregnant and who are birthing. We had support from, the sort of social service, health equity folks that you would expect, but also had some support from the most conservative members of the legislature who, to be very blunt, believe that women should be at home barefoot and pregnant, and it will help them too. And so that coming together, if the policy is the right policy, I'm not so worried about why people are doing it.
That's very interesting.
It's very pragmatic.
It is, ultimately it has to be, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't get stuff done by getting mad.
No, the perfect can be the enemy of the good.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite sayings.
Yeah. The work that you have done at Community Solutions over the years as a fellow, public policy fellow, and then a research fellow, and then associate director, chief operating officer, now CEO, has given you, I would imagine, a really good understanding of the policy environment of the state of Ohio. Where do you feel like that policy environment is good, is strong, is making a positive impact on people's lives, and where would you like to push the work of Community Solutions to improve it?
Yeah, there's a lot of work to be done. The work never ends. So in the moment of crisis in the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic, we got to do a lot of interesting things. There was a huge amount of innovation. Community Solutions was ready so that when policymakers came to us a little bit frantic about what do we do now that people can't go into Job and Family Services offices, we had ideas of making things looser, helping people get on benefits, making it easier to stay on benefits. That all was done, but it was temporary and has been rolled back. But now we have this grand experiment to show those impacts. A great example, the federal child tax credit enhancements cut child poverty by half, just like that. And so we see that it works. We have studies that show that people did work just as much as they had before. They used the money for the things that we would want them to use it for. Their own education, the education of their children, food, school clothes, whatever, you name it. Those really important things. And so you'll probably hear me talking a lot about some of these things that we've done, making it easier for people to stay on Medicaid so we don't have the kind of churn, which just costs the whole system money and harms people's health. We got to try a lot of stuff over the last few years, and reminding policymakers of what the real impacts of those things were, and that it didn't cause the damage that sometimes they're worried it will, is where I hope to bring some of the conversations.
Mm-hmm. What are you worried about in terms of the policy environment and our state legislature right now?
Yeah, a lot. There's a lot to worry about. I think what I get most frustrated with about policymakers is when it feels like attention is focused in the wrong places. Mm-hmm. And a great example this week is some of the anti-trans legislation. Ohio has other issues to deal with. Why are we worrying about what people are doing in their own homes and in their bedrooms? So, I would love to try and get the focus more on the things that impact people's day-to-day lives and the places where government can help or is hurting. And when we get distracted by other stuff that, doesn't matter, that's where I get most frustrated.
I learned yesterday that there may be a lot of folks are worried that ballot initiatives are being used to really just drive, which it's not a bad thing to drive voter engagement, right? But because there's likely to be a redistricting amendment on the ballot. I heard yesterday that there may be a right to fishing and hunting amendment on the ballot. Have you heard this?
No, but I mean, it'll draw a certain kind of turnout.
Right. I really don't like the word weaponize at all, but it does feel as if, our politics are very, very challenging right now. And working with, in the context of the supermajorities in the State House is a particular kind of challenge, because it's not about necessarily finding the common ground across the aisle or something like that. It's really just about, I think you wind up having to target sort of self-interest.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But I think we run into trouble as advocates when we see different groups as monoliths. There's as much variety among the Republican caucus as there is in some ways between the Democrat and Republican caucus. We've seen that in Columbus play out. We've seen it in Washington, D.C. play out with the speakers' fights in both of those places. And so it means putting together some interesting and unusual coalitions, which I think is something Community Solutions does particularly well, and is particularly well positioned to do some of those things. But, it's, there was a theory set forth from a woman out of a small university several years ago, that elections are not about changing people's minds any longer, they're about driving turnout. And I think she's right. That we have far fewer undecided voters than we have in past decades or past generations. People sort of know where they stand on things. It's who actually shows up to cast their vote will determine the outcome. And I think we're seeing that play out as a strategy, as a political strategy to try and get your voters to the polls.
Community Solutions is really focused on human services, health and human services. However, the effectiveness of health and human services is kind of dependent on a functioning democracy,
Right.
voter engagement, and
Absolutely.
so forth. The community where we are sitting in right now, and a lot of, and really like a half mile from downtown Cleveland, in almost any direction, you come to neighborhoods where voter turnout is typically below 20%. How worried are you about that in terms of as like a context for doing the work?
Right. I think voter turnout is vitally important.
Yeah.
And there have been a number of measures to try and keep turnout low in certain places, to disenfranchise people, to make it more difficult to vote. None of those are good for democracy. And so then I think it becomes more of a challenge for us locally to help our communities show up, to bring down some of those barriers as much as we can for people, so that we have good representation in those highest echelons of power that are making some of these decisions. So, as regulations make it more difficult for people to use their voice, we in the health and human service community have a responsibility, I believe, to counteract that and help people have the information they need, know the power, because some of this is disempowering too, right? Disenfranchisement, disempowerment, but help people sort of take back some of their power and make sure that they have good information to make decisions when they're there, voting or engaging in the civic realm.
I want to switch gears a little bit. There's a particular challenge that you have in leading a legacy organization, an organization that's more than 100 years old. I can relate. But how do you think about that? How does that feel to you?
Yeah, there is an enormous strength in the legacy of the organization. We can point to difficult times, which is helpful. We sort of, the organization has seen it all already in a lot of ways. My first responsibility is probably not to screw it all up, to make sure that the doors stay open. I think you probably feel the same way.
Right.
In your position. But it means both trying to learn from all those lessons of the past, but also recognize that things are constantly changing. And so, one of the most amazing things about the Center for Community Solutions is that we're a 113-year-old organization that has found ways to continue to stay relevant over and over again. And the way you do that is you have to be flexible, which is not easy always for a legacy organization. But we have a great team of people that are always thinking creatively about how to make the sort of change we want to see in the world. And I think that's an important piece of it. And, for us, there's a weight and there's a power and there is some credibility that comes with, having done this work for so long. And we can be patient in ways that not every organization working in the advocacy space is able to accept incremental change, because we see how things move over time.
Yeah. It really does take time. And also, as you come into your leadership role, it takes time to sort of introduce any innovations that you may want to bring. You spoke about the creativity of your team, but what kind of innovations does Emily Campbell want to bring to the Center for Community Solutions, this legacy organization?
Question. Well, it's not going to sound like an innovation. I want to do a lot more work on taxes.
Say more about that.
Ooh, sexy, taxes. And I'll tell you why. Because over the time that I've been doing this work, Health and Human Services has been fighting for a slice of a shrinking pie. And I would really like to see us get out of, this is the piece that we can have and talk about what's the whole pie and where are there opportunities for rebalancing some things. And I think what I'm most interested in through all of my research about the cause and consequences of poverty is resources for people and families. And you can do that through social services, through the safety net. We need that. We've got to protect that. But you can also do it through more tax credits or higher incomes or reducing costs for people in other ways. So there's lots of different ways to solve some of these problems, and we probably need all of it at once.
One of the risks of a think tank is that the policy, the sort of recommendations, the policy recommendations, the solutions you come up with, that's almost the easy part. How do you make sure that they get picked up?
Yeah, well, that's where advocacy comes in. Right. We've been called a think and do tank, and it's not just about the analysis. We also have a very strong advocacy role as well. We have an office in Columbus that is there every day talking to policymakers on some of these things. And so, I believe that the right information at the right hands in the right moment can be transformative, and that's what we're trying to do. And it often means repeating yourself until you're tired of hearing about it. Some of the solutions can be very easy. Poverty is about resources. People just need more money and then they'll be out of poverty. What?
Yeah.
We don't have the political will necessarily to do some of those things, but it's just constantly staying on message and staying with it and finding the opportunities. John Corlett often says, when a policy window opens, you want to shove as much as you can through it. So we want to be ready with those solutions so that when a moment arrives, like the COVID-19 pandemic, we have some of the answers when there's an appetite for making some of these changes.
All right, let's take a break from the really heavy policy stuff for a second. You are we're a national competitor in high school speech and debate, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I've been a nerd my whole life.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
You're among friends.
I know.
Nerds,
I found
one and
my
all.
people.
What would you be doing if you weren't at the Center for Community Solutions?
Oh, my colleagues are going to laugh because I talk about this all the time, my alternate life.
Yeah.
If I weren't at the Center for Community Solutions, I think if I hadn't fallen in love, I probably would have moved to Washington, D.C. And been working in federal policy and doing national policy work. I studied political science and economics and actually international political economy at Case. And so, I thought I would be working in trade and currency policies, but life takes you in different directions.
Yeah, nerdy in a totally different way.
Yeah, so those are my hobbies. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. Speech and debate, though. What did you love about high school speech and debate?
You know,
Were you one of those ones who talked really fast? Like
no.
Lincoln Douglas?
No.
Okay.
No. I did, this is probably going to come as no surprise. I did extemporaneous speaking, and in that category, they give you an envelope with 3 topics. You pick one, you have 20 minutes to prepare, and you have to give a 5-minute speech.
Wow.
So that's the, it served me well.
And what kind of topics would they give you?
Topics of the day, mostly like news stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, and so, it gave me a lot of confidence. The people that I met in there are doing some amazing things in their lives, and so those connections are nice to make early on. And then thinking critically about the problems of communities is something that I got to do at a very young age.
Another ridiculous question I want to ask you.
I like the most ridiculous ones.
The most ridiculous question. Superpowers. Would you prefer to be able to fly or be invisible?
Oh, definitely invisible.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Say more.
Well, if
Creepy.
you can creep around. No, definitely invisible. What are you going to do if you fly? I mean, flying's fun, but
Yeah.
you don't need that as a superpower. You can just go skydive.
What would you do with your invisibility?
I would sneak around and listen in all the rooms and be a fly on the wall. Be a fly on the wall of all the places that you don't usually get to hear the unvarnished opinions, and then
Okay.
utilize that to.
Staff, check your offices for nanny cams.
No, I don't want. They know I don't want to know.
Okay.
I wouldn't go with them. I'd go hang in the Speaker of the House's office and see who's really influencing.
That's awesome. That's outstanding.
That was an easy question, Dan.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well,
I don't need to fly.
I mean, trying to give people an opportunity to get to know you a little bit differently. The 3 book recommendations, please.
Oh, gosh, 3 book recommendations. Okay. I have 2 right off the bat, and I'm going to have to make up the 3rd one. This is where the extemporaneous speaking comes in, right? The first is that, so I took a month sabbatical before stepping into this position, which was really helpful, and I would recommend to everyone if you can swing it. But during that time, I listened to 15 hours of an audiobook about Native American history since 1890 called Heartbeat of Wounded Knee, and it was fabulous. It's written by a man whose name is escaping me, but who's a member of one of the Native American tribes, who has a PhD in anthropology, and he walked through, the best part was the first part of the book, because he walked through the history of different regions of the United States from first European contact, and you got to see the variety within that community. And really his whole thesis is that I Left My Heart at Wounded Knee has influenced Americans' view of indigenous people in this country, and that was only the beginning of the story, not the end. And so talking about what various tribes have been able to achieve and the challenges they've faced and the lessons that we can learn for the whole country. So it was fabulous and worth the investment. That's one. The second one is also nerdy. I read a great book called 9 Lies About Work that talks, it's like a business management book, but it talks about how the things that leaders or corporate America often look at for what people value at their jobs isn't actually what people value at their jobs. And one of the lies is that people have potential, and that there's this potential that you can measure, and if people either have it or they don't. And sort of their theory is that you shouldn't be looking for potential, you should be giving people opportunities to soar. And that's just one example. So that one was great. And then third, I read a lot of mystery novels too. So my third book recommendation, well, I'm reading a book right now called The Idiot. It was a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize a couple of years ago, and it's very like Dostoevsky, but set at Harvard University in the pre-internet era, and it's wickedly funny in very subtle ways as the students are moving through their lives.
Awesome. That's great. Okay. Well, Tartar, I think we're going to open it up to questions from this very friendly audience. If anybody has, however, a gotcha question
Sure.
for Emily Campbell, what did you know, when did you know it? Like, please bring that question as well. Who's got the first question?
Who's got the first question? Anybody? I told you guys to think of questions.
Come on.
All right. Well, I guess I'll start, and then
Okay, Will.
Thank
and then
you for
we'll
breaking
go,
the ice, Will.
All right.
Super awkward.
All right, so one of the fascinating things about the past few years is a lot of leadership changes at institutions across the region, different foundations and businesses. And I'm wondering, how do you navigate the personality differences among leaders, but at the same time, these organizations have a legacy of their own that they're also trying to protect. So how do you navigate the new with the legacy?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, fresh eyes see nothing but possibility, but people who've been there for a while see how far we've come. We have, in this community, we've had enormous leadership transition, generational transition. I think it's brought a lot of opportunity. It means having to form new relationships, and some of the rules of the game, so to speak, are changing. What people are influenced by, what they're interested in, is really different. But at least my experience is that having worked in this community for a long time, we already have established relationships with some of the folks that are ready, we've been preparing together for a long time for this moment. And I was talking before the event to a couple of people that have sort of walked the path I'm on right now ahead of me, been with an organization for a long time, stepped into a leadership role. And so learning from each other is really important. But the nice thing about leadership change is it means that conversations that we thought were closed or possibilities that we thought were never going to happen are suddenly open to discussion again. And so making sure that we may still get shot down, but you can at least ask some questions that have been off the table for a little while.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, we do have a question.
Hi, I'm Greg Johnson, Troublemaker. You met me earlier. I'm curious, when you first learned that you were coming to Cleveland, which was a couple years ago, many years ago, what was your first thought? Many people think of Cleveland as a place, mistake on the lake and what have you.
Oh, for sure.
So what was your first thought? And since you've been here a while, what's your big hurrah? What you discovered to be fantastic about Cleveland? And there are many, 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 many magnificent assets here that are wonderful, but people here don't know it.
That's dead on,
Okay.
right? Right.
You know what I do now, so we already know what's happening there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I came to Cleveland to go to Case. I'm going to out myself again as a huge nerd. I only came to Case because I won a full tuition scholarship in a history competition, and I really didn't want to come to Case. I wanted to go to American University. That's where sort of I saw myself. And I also grew up in Pittsburgh. And so, right. Lifelong Steelers fan, sorry. Maybe next year, Browns. But yeah, and so, my impressions of Cleveland were pretty negative. But when I arrived here, and Cleveland and Pittsburgh are like the same city. You all have a lake. We all have a lake. Pittsburgh has rivers. Like, same issues with manufacturing decline. At that time, Pittsburgh, I would say, was about 10 years ahead of where Cleveland could be, but facing so many of the same obstacles. But what you hit on is exactly the thing that continues to bother me about Cleveland, is that Cleveland doesn't have self-confidence. And like, truly, Pittsburgh is facing the exact same challenges. Our sports teams were also not very good for a very long time.
Your Pirates still aren't.
Right. That is true. Go Guardians. But, I think this sense, and I think it's changing in Cleveland too, the sense that like sort of we're all in it together. There are assets here. I remember meeting people from other parts of the country that would come and visit Cleveland and be like, I had no idea. And so that sort of self-confidence and being able to recognize that this is a challenged community, but there are enormous amount of assets. I mean, we have some of the highest per capita philanthropic resources in this community of any place in the country. And so recognizing the assets that we do have and capitalizing on those is something that I think Cleveland can do better. But I mean, it's a nice place. I like Cleveland. That's right. Quality of life, I mean, it's the amenities, from a personal level, the amenities that we have in this community that are affordable is incredible. It's not affordable for everyone, and we've got to work on that. But yeah, there's a lot of opportunities here.
How you doing, Emily?
Doing well.
Thank you for this. My name is Leon Meredith, and I'm part of local government, a precinct member, community activist, extreme volunteer. I do a lot. And I have a wealth of creative solutions that I have been practicing, implementing around my community. And my community, the elders, have guided me to get into local government and do more things because I stand out. And I want to know, is it possible to have a talk with you about how I can be more of service to your organization and to my community?
Sure, absolutely, happy to. I'd point you to the man sitting right next to you right now. Will Tarter is also a wonderful connector for the community. But yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for all of your help and work to the community. But we're always looking for good ideas and for thoughts about how things could be done differently, and especially for those of you that work in the neighborhoods. You know, we're a think tank. We can be a little ivory tower. So tell us how things are playing out in the lives of people that you're working with, so that we can try and find some of those policy levers or changes that might make a real impact, or things that we're having unintended consequences that we need to adjust a little bit. Where's the opportunity? Yeah, absolutely, would be happy to.
So hi, Emily.
Hi, Brandy.
So I'm sure, you've been at Community Solutions for over 16 years, and you've seen some folks sort of come and go and us transform a lot. So know that I can imagine there would be some strategic planning coming up.
There sure is.
So I'm just wondering, what is the first thing you think of in strategic planning that you're hoping to accomplish?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Community Solutions' current strategic plan was adopted in February 2020. So we all know what happened right after that. We didn't really we implemented it. But, I think Brandy and Brandy's my colleague at the Center for Community Solutions. She's our Medicaid policy fellow. But we really need, so we're an influential organization, but we're not a very big organization. And so thinking about where are the places where our organization and our expertise can have the greatest impact are some of the questions that I'm going to be asking our board to ask, asking our staff to think about. And then, the word poverty doesn't show up anywhere in our mission or any of our priorities. Part of that, I think, was a strategic decision because poverty was sort of a bad word to say. And the moment you said it, we couldn't do anything about it. But now we can. Same thing with racism. I mean, there were times when I could not say the word racism because people would stop listening. And that's not what we want. But that has changed. And so I think as the overall cultural understanding of some of the issues of the most vulnerable change, we can be a little bit out in front in what we're pushing on talking about and making some of these things more common topic of conversation.
Hi, Emily. So as someone who's worked in policy as well for a long time, I hear you when you say, the incremental is really moving forward. And yet I know we all aspire to the transformative. So can you talk a bit about how you really try and push for more transformative policy change, recognizing that we often have to compromise with the incremental?
Yeah, that's exactly. The transformative is the gold standard. It's the goal, right? If we can have transformative change, that's the best. When I think about transformative change, in the more recent times, I think of the Affordable Care Act and the expansion of Medicaid here in Ohio. We just put out on Monday status of women fact sheets looking at over 160 indicators of women's health, social, and economic conditions in each of Ohio's 88 counties. And I had to take a moment and pause because almost 95% of women and girls in this state have some form of health coverage. It's not enough, But those were not the numbers that we were looking at in 2012 and 2013. That's 10 years ago to have that sort of transformative change. There are some other things that I think can be transformative. So always looking for those transformative opportunities, but recognizing that incremental change can also be success. It just takes a lot longer. So it's more about being satisfied with our own work and being able to see how far we've come in some of these things and making progress. But yeah, if we can make transformative change, let's do it, for sure.
Do you find just a quick follow-up, do you find though that when you aggregate the increments, they add up to transformation,
They do.
right?
It just takes a long time.
But increments can be easier to manage. Transformative change sometimes the impulse can be like exactly the right thing, but the execution can sometimes wind up with many unintended consequences.
Well, and where I thought you were going, but you didn't, is that with transformative change, it's easy to think the work is done. The Affordable Care Act didn't solve health access.
Right.
It solved one part of it, but there's less of an appetite to talk about some of those other things that happen too.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it, incremental change takes a long time. One of my favorite examples is one of the best returns on investment for solving poverty is investments in early care and education, which are vitally important. But we have to wait for like 20 years to really see those people that are children today, enter the workforce, have the benefit of that. Our community can't wait. We have to do both things.
Right.
We have to do both things at once.
Fair. Okay. Biz.
Hey, it's Biz Vidoris with BVU. Changing a little, I'm just wondering about nonprofit boards, and is there anything more? We've got so many incredible nonprofits in our community. Is there more that we could do to engage our boards to understand the policy issues and be better advocates? And have you thought about that at all, and what we can do?
Yeah, well, the Center for Community Solutions has a great board. Some of them are here today.
So they're probably the best
so thank you.
board
They're the
ever.
Best. No, but they really are the best board ever. That's true. And one of the things that we look to our board to help with is thinking about issues from a different perspective. It's easy to get in our own sort of silos, and our board members come from all different industries. They come from, we try to have a variety of perspectives on our board, sort of challenging us to think a little bit differently about issues. And, some of the boards that I've been a part of, we're sort of hearing updates, we're checking the boxes, we're looking at the finances. But I think nonprofits can think about how to engage their board members in ways outside of fundraising, even if it's just like testing some of our ideas with a friendly audience, who's gonna give us feedback that then we can adjust some of our messaging. And I don't know that we always tap into the willingness of our board volunteers to look outside just their pocketbooks to utilize their expertise.
Hi, Emily.
Hi, Kyle.
Kyle Miller, a longtime fan of CCS.
Well, and our board chair.
Also a longtime fan, though, more importantly. There's been so many great staff members that have come through CCS. Dan had mentioned a little bit about your career progress through CCS as well. With so many great staff members coming through and eventually either staying on as policy experts or just experts in their field, or then even moving on to other organizations to become experts. Could you talk a little bit about how CCS tries to cultivate that within the staff?
Yeah, that's a great question and something that's really important. At the Center for Community Solutions, there are some people that come and stay for just a little while as a stepping stone onto their next amazing thing. Some of you are in the room who are alumni of Community Solutions. Others sort of stay for a long time. And I think that's one of the things that makes Community Solutions a special place, is that we have the opportunity to explore lots of different interests to really deepen our expertise. But the great thing about being with a legacy organization that has this big informal alumni network is that there's a lot of people in the community and across the state that sort of get what our very difficult to explain on a bumper sticker organization is trying to do and achieve, and have this perspective that can make some conversations a little bit easier when we go and meet with them. I mean, you know, a great example is that Bradford Davey, the mayor's chief of staff, was a graduate assistant at Community Solutions way back. Right. He doesn't put it on his bio. I don't know why. But, you know, being able, we can skip some steps when we go and talk to Bradford and others.
That's great. That's very cool.
Hi,
Oh, Zoma.
Emily.
Hi, Zoma.
So a few years ago, we had a sort of reawakening in this country around the matters of race matters. And now, almost 3 years later, you are already hearing corporations and even nonprofits speak of or not speak of as much about race matters. So can you speak to CCS commitment to this work in the nonprofit sector and in ourselves as an organization?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Zoma is helping to lead some of that work for us internally and externally. Yeah, it's tough. We had a moment where this was the topic on the minds of everyone in the country. We shined a light on some very serious disparities. There was a lot of interest in making some change and some action, but that's dissipated. You're exactly right. And so, you know, at Community Solutions, we've done an awful lot of thinking, of discernment, of studying. Just this year, I know our staff are aware, but we have adopted a North Star around equity, diversity, inclusion, belonging, and some values in that we're implementing in our work both internally and externally. But issues of disparities aren't going to go away. And so it's continuing to work on do the good work even when it's not the thing top of mind, and remind people that, you know, disparities exist and they're not an accident. The other piece I'll say about it is that for 400 years, policy has been used sort of sneakily to perpetuate racism, to perpetuate disparities. And I think now's a moment for us to also be a little bit sneaky. And maybe we won't say in certain circles that we want to do this because it will improve equity and inclusion. But if that's the result of it, I'm thinking specifically of some of our work around public benefits programs. Anything you do to improve public benefit programs has a disproportionately positive impact on people of color, because that's who disproportionately utilize those programs. I'm not going to say that to most policymakers in Columbus, but that's the result of it. And so it is not an issue that's going away. It's an issue that Community Solutions will continue to talk about, that I will continue to talk about, and, you know, look for those places where progress is being made and how to accelerate it. In the latest census data, the poverty rate for Black and African Americans was the smallest it's been on record. Something's heading in the right direction. How do we accelerate it? And part of it, I think, is having open conversations and places where we are willing to talk about and willing to invest in diversity and inclusion, even though it's hard work, but it's the work of a lifetime.
Yes.
Thanks.
That's a really interesting little fact. Is that national? Nationally statistics?
Nationally, yep.
Wow, that's great.
Great to be here, you two. Happy Festivus. Dan, Emily, thank you. As you've been talking, so you mentioned a couple kind of signature victories over the years. You mentioned, I believe, connecting doulas to Medicaid. You mentioned some of the more kind of, you know, sweeping funding available for people catalyzed by the pandemic to, you know, get children and families out of poverty. You mentioned, you know, over a more protracted term, getting, you know, women connected to healthcare. You mentioned wanting to work, possibly, you know, coming down the pike on taxes.
Yep.
So I was just curious, you know, also coming down the pike, and with these policy windows that you've mentioned, is there anything, maybe any opportunities coming up in the more near term where you think you might have an opportunity to, like, really attack something specific? Do you have, like, anything that's, like, top of mind? And you mentioned also you've got to talk to your board about, you know, an agenda coming up. Are there any, like, specific bullet points, like, on that agenda where it's like, you know, this is coming up, we have an opportunity, it's, you know, it's time to time to roll on this?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things that I think is an opportunity are some of the administrative changes that have happened in Columbus with the creation of the new Department of Children and Families, or whatever it's called. Sort of rethinking how family support is organized within the state of Ohio. And so there are some new people in that department. There's some people that were operating under different departments that have moved over and may have some more opportunity to connect. So that's a very sort of wonky place that there's opportunity. I think the other thing that we will continue to work on is access to public benefits. So Medicaid redeterminations, we're in this sort of great unwinding of the public health emergency, and making sure that people who are eligible for Medicaid continue their Medicaid coverage and they don't go off the benefit just because they didn't send in their paperwork. Ohio's actually performed pretty well in this, but we need to keep at them and keep those solutions coming. You know, another thing that we're hearing a lot about is the sort of being flummoxed about why are people that have jobs accessing public benefits? And I think there's some real opportunity to have some conversations about why that is and what kinds of supports workers and families need in order to be able to, you know, change their family's trajectory, you know, and the benefit cliff and some of the other things that I've worked on. And then there may be some opportunities at the federal level as well, thinking about like the minimum benefit for supplemental nutrition assistance program. It was increased enormously during the pandemic. It's gone back down to, you know, very, very little. We have some research that'll be coming out about the impact that that's had, especially on older adults in our community. But some of those things, I think our opportunities in the very nearest term are probably in the regulatory side of things. But, you know, there are always legislative opportunities too.
We're likely to see a minimum wage initiative on the ballot.
Yeah.
Any research and, you know, regarding specifically the benefits cliff and the impact of $15 an hour on tipped employees?
Yeah, that's good. I've had a lot of conversations sort of behind the scenes about this with some folks. The one caution I'll give is when you run the numbers, $15 an hour meant something different in 2018 and 2019 than it means now. And so if we just update it for inflation, it needs to be $17, $18 an hour. So it's an area where, you know, I don't want us to sell ourselves short. It's not going to just solve all the problem or solve it in the way that we always have. But, you know, more resources in the pockets of families is always a good thing. I think part of it is that the labor market has changed, so $15 an hour is easier for employers to swallow than it was before. But yeah, important to think about sort of the total resources that are coming into a family or the total resources available to someone, to think about that and to be careful about inflation.
Right.
Hi, Emily.
Hi, good to see you.
Burt Rall, retired from Benjamin Rose and current chair of COOP. I just like to advocate that one of the items we keep on the policy agenda is mental health, particularly for seniors.
Yes, great point. Mental health, right? And mental health sort of across the spectrum and across all populations. Yes, absolutely. You know, mental health is an area where we're seeing some really concerning data and information, and an area where coverage doesn't solve the problem. And so we are thinking about mental health for older adults. We're thinking about maternal mental health and the impact that that has on infant mortality and other issues. We're looking at some really concerning data about the well-being of teens and high schoolers, especially high school women. And so that's something that we have to keep top of mind. It's a vitally important part of well-being, and one that's often overlooked.
Hi, Emily.
Hi, Marcia.
Congratulations again, and it's so great to hear you talk about community solutions as a think and do tank. and how Community Solutions really leans into that advocacy role and power. I'm wondering, you get to work with so many amazing organizations around town who work on behalf of literally hundreds of thousands
Yes.
of individuals in our community. And I'm wondering how you see Community Solutions' role as helping other organizations and the clients, patients, customers that they work with lean into that advocacy role as well.
Yeah, I think that is it's really a imperative. It's a responsibility of our organization to provide some of the support for places that maybe can't invest in a full-time person to be looking at policy. And so bringing information to the community is an important aspect of it. You know, we did a lot of advocacy training for nonprofit organizations in the past. That's sort of, we're doing some of it still. I think there's we need to do more of it. And I'd like to see our organization do more of it, help people be informed. And there's an aspect of our work as well where we need to hear from the folks who are working in communities about how our policy is playing out in the lives of the people that they're serving, so that we can take that information back to inform our own advocacy agenda. So it's really a feedback loop and mutually beneficial, but bringing, you know, we don't want the knowledge that we have at Community Solutions to be trapped. So some of our work in putting together neighborhood profiles and community profiles, which I'm happy to say that we will be doing a brand new set of enhanced Cleveland neighborhood and ward profiles in the new year. It's going to take us a while to get there. But continuing to make sure that advocates have the information they need, and then working to encourage that advocacy and point out places where it can have the most impact, because none of us want to just shout into the ether, right? I think is truly core to the work of the Center for Community Solutions and how we achieve our mission. We don't provide direct services, but we're trying to improve health, social, and economic conditions. That only happens through the work of so many of you in this room and those who are working directly with communities.
Good morning, everybody. I think it's still morning. Gloria Craig, Community Engagement Coordinator here. My question is, what is some advice you have for the newer generation of folks coming into advocacy work? What are some things that you did at the beginning of your career to really help you become an expert today?
That's a great question. I don't know. I feel like I'm still learning. You know, I think one thing is to take advantage of opportunities to hear conversations and to sit in rooms, even if you're just sitting and listening, because you'll learn so much from that. The other piece of it, I think, is that sometimes patience is a virtue in this work, and it takes a while to realize that incremental progress is progress, because it doesn't feel like it. And so I think that is a piece of it. But continual effort to keep at it and to look for those opportunities is what makes policy change and success and makes it lasting.
All right, excellent. One more round of applause for Emily Campbell. Yes, thank you, Emily. Congratulations. All right, and thank you, Dan. This concludes the December meeting of the Human Services Advocacy Network. I'd like to thank the new CEO of Community Solutions, Emily Campbell, as well as the CEO of the City Club, Dan Moulthrop, for moderating today's conversation. I'd like to thank our Community Solutions volunteers and lead organizers, as well as our host, Lutheran Metropolitan Ministry. Most of all, I'd like to thank all of you for attending today. This event is being recorded and will be posted on the Community Solutions website next week. And so I thank you all for being here and hope you all have a wonderful holiday season. Thank you.